if you look at the call of people into offices in the Bible, none of them were there going, "Ooh, pick me, pick me, pick me," right? God came to them and said, "I'm choosing you to do this." And most of them were like, their first instinct wasn't, "Okay, where do I sign up?" Right? And God calls people according to how he calls them. And he uses the body of Christ to be able to do that in different ways. And for us today, I would just say, have open ears as best you can to hear maybe God speaking to you through those people that are encouraging you in that way.
Thanks for sitting down with me.
Yeah, hey, I'm happy to do it.
Looking
Thanks
forward
for the
to this.
invitation.
Yeah, we've known each other for a long time.
We go way back.
We're one of the
mid-90s.
It is
at Concordia.
What I remember about those years is that we all had to go by last names except for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
well, because you were Michael.
I was Michael.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We had Decor and Sheeman and Kuhn and I can't remember who else.
I grew up, I was always Michael S. growing up.
Yeah.
Because there was always 2 or 3 Michaels in every class I had. I was saved for
late 70s, early 80s. Yeah. It was like the number one name.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So your story is very interesting. I had a visit with a colleague of yours earlier, Cy Van Manen, who also had 2 stories into the ministry and then into the chaplaincy.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So your story starts as a road into the diaconate.
Yeah.
And then it ends up in the ministry. So I'd like to give you the opportunity to just kind of take your time and tell the whole story. And I'll probably poke and prod in a few little points afterwards.
Absolutely.
But
yeah, it's interesting. I grew up in an LCC church, faithful still to this day. My mom's a church organist, and Dad was always a elder or usher or whatever needed to be done around the church. So I grew up in LCC in Regina and was part of youth group at Sunday school and all of that, but never really had what they think about as like this internal call to the ministry. I can remember we always had posters from the seminaries and things on our bulletin boards and things like that. And so I always knew of it, but I had never felt a call that in that sense, right? And a kind of a pull towards ministry. And even all the way through high school. And then in really June of my grade 12 year, touring music group called The Crew that I ended up being a part of did a concert at our church. And they announced at that concert that they themselves were going to be going off the road, but they were going to be forming this new organization that would kind of take over for them. And I had this sense when I saw that, it's almost a sense of like, oh, I'm going to do that. That's intriguing to me. I want to talk more about it. I want to learn more about it. I want to do that. And ended up that happened. So through that summer after graduation, got connected with them, ended up going on the road with them right after high school. And through that, because they were based in Edmonton, an LCC-based organization, got connected with Concordia. Well, now Concordia University of Edmonton, it was.
Yeah.
Concordia University College of Alberta. Got connected there and then got connected to a whole bunch of LCC and other churches throughout the country, being on tour and doing concerts and vacation Bible schools and things like that, which really opened my eyes to what LCC was about and what possibilities there were. At the very same time, this new thing called the Director of Prayer Services program was starting up at Concordia in Edmonton. And so, in God's timing, I guess for me personally, got to know about that. And then so spent the year on the road and then entered into this program, which was really a brand new program. My class was the second class to start into this program. And so went through that. It's a bachelor's program and went through 4 years of college and a year of internship, and then served as what we now call Deacon DPS, Director of Prayer Services, for 13 years. And so that was kind of the first, it's almost half now of my time in church work.
I'd like to just poke a little bit at that. So you were a youth, just grade 12 in Regina. Not yet making plans to go to Concordia when the concert came
Concordia by? Wasn't. No, I had plans actually going to the University of Regina.
June.
This was the end of my grade 12 year is a whole other story.
Okay.
But had some sense of, or didn't really have much sense of direction at that point, and had enrolled at the University of Regina, but it wasn't like something I was feeling like, this is really what I want to do. And so when this concert happened, it might have been a little bit earlier than June, but anyway, sometime late in that year, it was like just a spark was lit there and kind of changed the whole direction of things. Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to. Do you recall like what that concert was like? Like, I don't know, because that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it's just like, for those who know the crew and crew ministries, it's a very, it's not a concert like you think of, going to a big show, right? It's very relational, sing-alongs, that kind of thing, really personal and that kind of thing. So, and we knew that based on who they were and our exposure to them before. But the new thing there was they announced that, we're leaving this role and we're going to form this new thing. And I had grown up not only as just a member of a church and a child in the church, but we had a real strong music program. So we had choirs and we dabbled in different instruments. My mom's a church organist, so I took both piano and organ lessons, didn't have much of a choice, but enjoyed that growing up and had very much that be a foundation for a lot of things. And so it was kind of this interesting timing of just, it literally was just like this switch that turned. It was like, I'm going to do that. And now it wasn't really up to me, right? Like I had to apply and that kind of thing, but I just had this sense of, no, that's what I'd really like to do.
Okay. So then, so I want to make sure I got the timeline right. So you kind of, the open door to crew ministries kind of happened in the late spring or early summer of that year. Yeah. You went to Edmonton next year for Concordia?
No, so I went to Edmonton because Crew Ministries was based in Edmonton. So I moved right after high school. I moved to Edmonton to go undergo training that September. And so we spent the month of September training and then spent the next year on the road basically. And then so that was the fall of 1995, fall of 1994. And then in the fall of 1995, I started at Concordia, but I went to Edmonton to join Crew Ministries.
Okay. When you reflect back on that tour, what are the things that stand out to you that were part of that experience that really tugged at you?
Yeah. I think first of all, it was just it opened my eyes to the wider world of what LCC actually was, right? Because I grew up in Lutheran Church Canada and had some connection, and even our youth group actually took a weekend tour up to Concordia University at that time. And so had a little bit of exposure to that. But what that year really did for me was open my eyes to, there's this whole country full of churches. And the experience of leading them in music and it was again, this time of discovering new music. Like music had always been there. There was church music and then there was other music on the radio and stuff. But to be able to use the musical gifts that God had given me and that I had developed over the years, just growing up, music lessons and choirs in school and things like that, to be able to use the gifts that I had in a way that wasn't, because I still wasn't thinking pastoral ministry. And so it was just this opportunity of, the way that God has shaped me can actually be used in service in the church. Because it wasn't, at that point, it wasn't either pastor or nothing. There was this new thing called the DPS, and it was really in line with what I had been doing and using and learning throughout that year, right? And so, and because we were based in Edmonton, we were back in Edmonton a number of times and had connections at Concordia. And that became a pretty important thing too, is talking to people at Concordia and hearing from them. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So it sounds like the experience had a lot of resonance with kind of how you saw yourself and what you saw your giftings to be. And it just felt right. Yeah. So it was easy to kind of proceed in that training.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you go through the program, you got placed in Penticton, right?
No, got placed in Kelowna.
Oh,
First Lutheran Church in Kelowna. Yeah. Yeah. So I finished internship. I did my internship at Bethel Lutheran Church in Sherwood Park, which was Edmonton, but they were just moving to Sherwood Park at that time, and then got placed in Kelowna at First Lutheran Church there. Yeah.
But then eventually went down to Penticton.
Yeah. So spent 4 years in Kelowna, went through significant and challenging time there. They terminated the position. And so I had to find a new way forward, which again, that's a whole other thing in itself. But at that point I was looking at the options were look at pastoral ministry, and I explored that a little bit, or quite honestly, look outside of LCC, because there wasn't really, because it was so new, there wasn't a lot of opportunity there weren't a lot of other LCC churches looking for DPSs. And so I actually started looking at LCMS and ended up receiving a call to Redeemer Lutheran Church in Spokane, Washington. And so for the next 4 years, served at an LCMS church.
Now I remember that.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah. So Okanagan, and then a little bit south of there.
4 years Kelowna.
4 years Kelowna.
4 years Washington.
Yes.
And then Penticton?
And then Penticton. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, so in that time, you're serving in diaconal work, probably felt like a good fit, right?
Yeah.
Even though there's some tumult and whatnot, and the canceling of the program or the role and whatnot.
Yeah.
But like, so now you're a pastor.
Yeah.
So tell that part of the story. Like,
Sure.
When did that tug really start to get strong? Who were the people who were part of that?
Yeah.
Was there resistance and then something was overcome, or how does that story go?
Yeah. So honestly, the position of a DPS for a male is kind of an odd one in our church. First of all, there hasn't been very many, and second of all, there's this. Well, if you're a church worker, but you're not a pastor. How does that work? And you're a man. How does that work? And so there was always this. And so once I started in the DPS role, there was kind of always this. It's just kind of there, right? Like this undercurrent of well, maybe what is this role? And we're still trying to figure it out as a synod, and we figure it out on a congregational level. How best do I come alongside the pastor to serve because even in the kind of the ancient order of deacons, it's a little bit different the way we've defined it, but it's the role is a support to the pastoral office, right? And so how do we best do that? And so it really the pull, I guess you could say, it was not a strong one, but started in Kelowna, and just as I worked together with Pastor Keith Reisdorf there, and he was a wonderful pastor to me as a worker, and to our congregation as well. We'd have conversations from time to time and things like that. And then when we went to Spokane, that tug started to grow a little bit more. We had a wonderful senior pastor there. It was a little larger congregation, so I worked alongside also another what's called the DCE. So in LCMS in the U.S. Director of Christian Education. It's basically the same role, but a little bit different focus. But had some colleagues there, and our senior pastor there was another encouragement to me. Say that he's the one that started thinking, you ought to think about this a little bit more. I mean, Pastor Keith had said that a little bit too, but it started to become a little bit more prevalent down there. And again, at that time, LCMS was exploring this new program they called Specific Ministry Pastor. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't quite ready to go there but I started, that's where I started actually kind of looking into that and making a little bit more of a concerted effort to think, what would this look like? Just explore it a little bit more. Then we ran into immigration problems down there and had to come back. Basically, that's the short version of it. And so it was with that in mind that I came back to receive this call to Concordia and Penticton as DPS. And then as we started to serve together, I served with Pastor Vic Morris there, who again was another wonderful encouragement to me. And because I had already started thinking about it, those conversations started to happen a little bit more frequently. What would this look like? At that point then, I had served for 10 years. I came to serve for 10 years while I was in Penticton, which made me eligible, according to our LCC handbook, to consider pastoral colloquy rather than going through the traditional residential program. So we started to explore that, and that's the way that I actually entered into the pastoral ministry. So it was a bit of a unique process, but a real blessing to me, and I think and trust to others as well, to be able to serve full-time as a deacon, as a DPS, while also doing the colloquy process and receiving pastoral training. And then at the end of that, received a call from my still current parish to serve them no longer as DPS, but as pastor. And so I've now been doing that. I just finished my 12th year as pastor there. So been there 16 years total, 4 years as a DPS and 12 as pastor.
That's cool. So it sounds like the pastoral call was like a real slow build.
Yep.
Right? Super slow.
I've used that.
A little seed that's there at the beginning, niggle.
Yep.
And then it grows and grows and grows. And there was no real like turning point, but it just kind of.
No. Yeah, I've used that title of that Beatles song, The Long and Winding Road. That's kind of my journey into the pastoral ministry.
Gotcha.
But it's God's faithfulness all the way through that, right? Like it wasn't this lightning bolt or anything that hit it, but God using various people in various places in various ways, sometimes in ways that felt pretty natural, but also sometimes that maybe were pretty surprising. And eventually then, had more of the sense of this internal call, but then was affirmed by the regular call of the church into the ministry. Yeah.
That's great. So you had 13 years of diaconal ministry. 13 years of diaconal ministry.
Yeah.
And now 12 years of pastoral ministry.
Yeah.
Lots of experience in the church.
Yeah.
What's great about working in the church? You could pick either again or both.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear a story. If you got like a good story of something that like caricaturizes what you love best about the work you do.
So because of my role as a DPS, it's just built into the nature of the role that it's team ministry. And we always have some sense of team ministry in the sense that we're working together with lay leaders in our congregations, with volunteers, and we have other people, in other congregations in our circuits and things like that. So there's always a sense of team, but I was there full time with a pastor and in Spokane with another DC, and in fact, eventually two other DCs. So that sense of working together in this role, in this thing we call ministry in the large sense, to be able to share that with others, just overall has been such a joy. And it was just baked into the nature of the DPS role, which I so very much, and I so very much appreciated it. And then when I resigned, it's again a kind of an odd process, but just the way the colloquy happened, I resigned my diaconal call on a Friday, got the call to pastoral ministry on the Saturday, accepted it, and was installed on the Sunday. That doesn't happen very often, if ever. But when that happened, our congregation didn't replace the DPS role. So I served, we had a school and we had a team ministry in that sense, but it wasn't the same situation. I wasn't no longer in the same situation anymore. And I really, really missed that specific team ministry for a long time. And then I didn't intentionally do this, but just kind of got used to it. And now over the last year, we have an assistant pastor part-time with us again. And I've really, it's just reminded me how good it is to work with others in this kind of role. And it's one of the things I enjoy the most is serving together with them, not being isolated in that. And we've always had a good circuit, and we've always had good support. To be able to do this together is a really, really good thing. And to be able to serve the people that we're called to serve in a way that, it's multiplied when we're able to do this together. That's one of the things I enjoy. It's just working with others in doing this together. I
want to go on that one a little bit because I'm going to tell you something you probably don't know.
Okay.
So when I'm around the church and talking to different people about different people, candidates, and especially when there's vacancies, people start to say, they start to ask questions about different people and say things about different people. And your name has come up before when I've been having conversations with people that are looking at a pastoral call. And you've become known in some circles as somebody who is very, very good at raising up the body of believers for service.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Would you affirm that? Do you think that's something that you do in your pastoral ministry? Because hearing you talk about team ministry, right? It would be a pretty natural extension to say helping the priesthood of all believers to be deployed, to be trained, to be engaged, right? In this ministry is also really, really rewarding and part of what you do. Would you agree with that?
Sure. I would say that's fair. That's interesting. I was to receive that affirmation is an encouragement to me. And I think the way I would look at it now is I probably do that with more intention now because I had that, right? So when I was I hear another pastor say this, when I was a baby pastor, when I was a baby DC, when I was a baby church worker, I had that from others, right? And people who lifted me up and encouraged me and worked on me and with me, to do that. And so I don't know if I ever necessarily consciously thought this is what I'm supposed to do, but it was just kind of like, this is how I went about it. And when I use that word team ministry, that's why I'm careful to qualify team ministry and what kind of team ministry it is, because it's always team ministry in the broad sense, right? Of we are as church workers, we are serving people, yes, but what are we there to serve them? It's not like we're just there doing everything by ourselves and they're just these passive people receiving all the time. But yeah, I mean, thinking about Ephesians 4, right? That the what God has called his servants and officers and workers in the church to do is to work with the people, to equip them with the gifts that God has given, and to serve them in that way, so that they too might be part of the body of Christ and live their whatever part of the body of Christ you want to map onto that, that they would live their vocations that way. And that's really, I don't know how conscious it's been, honestly, but obviously if others are seeing it, then I'm really thankful for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Two last questions. I wonder, I mean, stories are always great. I don't know if there's somebody comes to mind, whether when it was your when you were a deacon or as a pastor, that maybe was a bit timid, but that you helped them to kind of grow in using their gifts. Does anybody come to your mind quickly?
Sure. Yeah. There was this would have been as part of my role as a DPS in when I was probably serving for 7 or 8 years at that point. And I was working primarily with music teams and helping them. So leading music for worship, but then also leading teams to be able to grow in their musical abilities and their leadership of music. I've always, as I said, I've always been a musician. I've really enjoyed and see so much value in music in the church and the arts in the church. And so, yeah, I can think of a couple of people on our music teams where, there's this careful balance in church music where you want to do it well,
yep,
right? And the way I would phrase it is, you don't want to be a distraction on either end, right? You don't want to be a distraction because you're doing things so poorly that it becomes a distraction. But you also don't want to go too far in the other direction. I've worked with I'm a capable musician. I'm not a professional level musician, but I've worked with them, and so it's actually maybe odd, but it happens in both directions. So that I've been able to work with people in music who are good musicians, but maybe need some shepherding along the way to figure out how to best use their gifts in a confident way, right? I always talk about the combination of humbleness, humility, and confidence. Mm-hmm. We need to have both at the very same time. And at the same time, I've also been able to work, and I can think of one man in particular who is an amazing musician, and being able to work with him to teach him a little bit more about what it meant to be a church musician. Uh-huh. And he responded very well to that, and was really, it was a joy to work with him because he was just such a good musician. But he came to realize, what it meant to be a church musician in that way. Yeah.
Last question.
Yeah, certainly.
We're not sure who's going to see these vignettes or whatever.
Sure.
But it's possible that somebody like you, fresh out of high school, I don't know, nothing seems to fit, registered here, not sure if that's going to work. The notion of possibly working in the church is there on the horizon somewhere. If you could go back all these years and talk to the Michael Schutz back in those Regina days, would you say anything to kind of encourage him in the direction of ministry? What would you say to him?
Yeah, I think the probably the two words I would use right off the bat is be open. I think sometimes we have, and I know I certainly did. I mean, I have wonderful pastors growing up too, but I had this picture of church work as, well, that's what it is, right? You have a pastor, and then you have all the volunteers and that kind of thing. But there is, I mean, God's given his church the freedom to create offices like the DPS office that we still have in Lutheran Church Canada. And so be open to those that might be speaking into your life to say, hey, have you ever thought about? And to hear that not as a recruitment sales pitch, but maybe even as the voice of God through that person saying, hey, just maybe pay attention to this. Maybe think about this a little bit. Be open to that, and don't just. I was one that just kind of went, yeah, okay, I know, but I don't see myself there. If you look at the call of people into offices in the Bible, none of them were there going, "Ooh, pick me, pick me, pick me," right? God came to them and said, "I'm choosing you to do this." And most of them were like, their first instinct wasn't, okay, where do I sign up, right? And God calls people according to how he calls them. And he uses the body of Christ to be able to do that in different ways. And for us today, I would just say, have open ears as best you can to hear maybe God speaking to you through those people that are encouraging you in that way.
Michael, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for sitting down with me.
You too. It's good to see you again in this way and moving into this new role, and brings me back to our Concordia choir days too.
It's good time.